The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the sprawling fields that enveloped Sarah's new home. It was their first week in the countryside, but the excitement of their new life felt like a distant echo, drowned out by the haunting silence that enveloped her. She stood at the sliding glass door, staring out at the empty barn, its worn wooden frame sagging under the weight of time. "Is anyone ever going to come looking for me?" she murmured, folding her arms tighter around her body, as if to shield herself from the loneliness that seeped under her skin. Her mother was busy unpacking, and her stepfather was absorbed in his work, leaving Sarah to navigate the vast emptiness on her own. Sarah had always been drawn to animals, and the barn, the only part of the property that seemed to pulse with life, beckoned her like a ghost from the past. As the last rays of sun illuminated the dilapidated structure, she made a decision. With a quick, determined step, she grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the barn, her heart racing with both fear and excitement. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the scent of hay. Shadows danced on the walls, and the creak of old wood echoed through the space. Her flashlight beam swept across the stalls, revealing cobwebs and remnants of neglect. But then, she heard Ida's soft whinny, barely audible above the silence. Sarah's breath hitched as she followed the sound, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in her chest. When her light landed on the source of the noise, she gasped. It was an old horse, its coat matted and dirty, with soulful eyes that seemed to carry stories of a lonely past. Sarah approached cautiously, her instincts guiding her forward. The horse looked up, and in that moment, a spark of recognition passed between them. It was as if they were both solitary creatures in a world that had long forgotten them. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, her heart swelling with empathy. "What are you doing all alone?" Kneeling down, she extended her hand, hoping to bridge the gap between them. To her surprise, the horse took a step closer, its nose brushing against her palm. Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to cry, a mixture of joy and anguish washing over her. "I know how you feel," she murmured, wiping a tear away before it could fall. Just as she was lost in this moment of connection, she heard approaching footsteps. Startled, she turned to see Jake, her stepbrother, standing at the entrance of the barn. His expression was a mix of surprise and curiosity. "What are you doing here?" he asked, casually leaning against the doorframe, hands stida in his pockets. "Just meeting a friend," Sarah replied, gesturing toward the horse. Her cheeks flushed as she felt a rush of embarrassment at being caught in such an emotional moment. "He's been here all alone." Jake raised an eyebrow, glancing between Sarah and the horse. "You're not seriously thinking about keeping it, are you?" "Why not? Look at him," she said, a spark of defiance igniting within her. "He needs someone, and so do I." Jake pushed away from the door and took a few hesitant steps forward, curiosity overtaking him. "You really think you can handle it? This place isn't exactly a petting zoo." "I can learn," Sarah shot back, her voice firmer than she felt. "I've always wanted a horse. Maybe this is my chance." He studied her, his expression softening. "You think it'll fill the void you're feeling?" The bluntness of his statement pierced through her determination, prompting her to look down at the ground. "I don't know." The truth was, she was seeking more than just a horse. She craved companionship, understanding, and the sense of belonging that had eluded her since moving here. "Let's not get carried away," Jake replied, trying to lighten the mood. "What's next? A petting zoo in the backyard?" Sarah couldn't help but smile at his teasing tone. "Maybe I'll make this place the best petting zoo around," she shot back, letting the warmth of laughter invade her gloomy heart. For the first time since their arrival, she felt a flicker of hope. "Besides, I have you as my trusty sidekick," she added mischievously. Jake rolled his eyes but chuckled, his blue gaze resting on her in a way that made her feel less alone. "Trust me, I don't know the first thing about horses." "Neither do I." She grinned, warmth spreading through her as they stepped closer to the horse, who stood watching them both with curious eyes. Together, they talked softly to the animal, slowly gaining its trust. Jake reached out a tentative hand, and to their collective surprise, the horse leaned into his touch, nuzzling against him as if recognizing a kindred spirit in both its visitors. "What should we call him?" Sarah pondered aloud, imagining what it would be like to have a companion who didn't know about her insecurities or the weight of her loneliness. "I don't know." "How about Shadow?" Jake suggested, looking contemplative. "Shadow? Why?" she asked, intrigued. "Because he's been hiding in the dark. Just like us," Jake said, his tone more serious now. A chill swept through her, and Sarah felt an unspoken bond forming as they stood together in that dim barn, the weight of their shared experiences hanging heavily in the air. "I like it," she finally conceded, warmth blossoming in her chest. As they spent the evening caring for Shadow, filling his stall with fresh hay and feeding him apples, laughter began to replace the silence that had once engulfed Sarah's life. For the first time in weeks, the heaviness in her heart felt lighter. "Do you think your mom would let you keep him?" Jake asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable rhythm of their work. "I think so," Sarah replied, her optimism rising. "She wouldn't say no to a little fun around here." Jake chuckled, glancing at her as if he could sense the shift within her. "You really want to do this?" he asked. "More than anything," she admitted. They stood for a moment, studying Shadow, who was now contentedly munching on a piece of hay. With their shoulders nearly touching, Sarah was overwhelmed by the warmth of their burgeoning friendship. Maybe this was the connection she had yearned for, not just with Shadow, but with Jake too. As the barn filled with the golden hues of twilight, Sarah knew deep down that this was just the beginning of something important. A journey not defined by loneliness but by companionship, adventure, and the healing power of shared experiences. And so, with the warmth of Jake beside her and the promise of a new friend in the form of Shadow, she felt a small spark ignite within her. Here, in this old barn, she was finally starting to feel at home, finding common ground. Dawn broke over the horizon, enveloping the countryside in a soft golden blanket. Sarah stood at the barn door, a steaming mug of cocoa clasped in her hands, taking a moment to absorb the tranquility around her. It had been a week since she'd discovered Shadow, and the bond they had begun to form was becoming something profound. Yet, it was clear that Shadow wasn't the only one who needed nurturing. Sarah found herself leaning into her connection with Jake even more, as their laughter filled the empty spaces of the new home they shared. "Ready for another adventure, partner?" Jake's voice broke her reverie, pulling her from her thoughts like a buoy tossed in a gentle sea. "Always," she replied, trying to mirror his infectious enthusiasm. She took a small sip of her cocoa before setting it down on a nearby hay bale. Today was the day they'd attempt to take Shadow for a short ride-y leap into the unknown that had both excited and terrified her. As Jake stepped into the barn, he carried a tack box, clearly prepared for their adventure. The sight of it caused butterflies to flutter in Sarah's stomach. Would they actually say egged in riding him? The thought was terrifying yet thrilling. She had always dreamed of galloping across open fields, and today could be the first step toward that dream. "First things first," Jake began, setting the box down and pulling out a saddle as if he were unveiling a treasure. "We have to familiarize him with the equipment. He's been alone for so long. We need him to feel comfortable." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of determination and anxiety. "Will he really let us put a saddle on him?" "Let's find out," Jake grinned, his confidence spilling over into Sarah's apprehension. Together, they approached Shadow, who stood munching quietly in his stall. "Easy, boy," Sarah cooed, reaching out to stroke the horse's neck. Shadow turned his big brown eyes toward her, seeming to sense her nervousness as he leaned into her touch. Jake brushed a hand through his unruly hair, looking thoughtful. "If he trusts you, he'll trust me. Just keep talking to him." As they began to brush Shadow's coat, Sarah felt a palpable energy in the air between her and Jake, a silent understanding blossoming amidst the familiar routine. Their fingers brushed against each other as they moved in sync, and a thrill shot through her, both exhilarating and disconcerting. "Let's try the saddle," Jake proposed, his voice steady. He lifted it gently, approaching Shadow with a cautious but determined demeanor. Leaning in with the grace of someone who had spent time around horses, he carefully placed the saddle on Shadow's back. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the horse to react. To her relief, Shadow stood still, the tension in his muscles easing as Jake tightened the girth. "See, he's a natural." Jake grinned, a sense of pride radiating from him. Sarah chuckled, but the nerves remained. "You speak to horses now?" "Only the smart ones," Jake teased, a playful glint in his eyes. The tension between them eased slightly, and she could feel a growing trust between them, not just with the horse, but in their friendship. After adjusting the saddle, Jake turned back to Sarah. "You ready to get on?" "I guess," she replied, her heart racing. Was she truly ready for this? The mere thought of it set her stomach dancing. "Here, I'll help you up," he offered, extending a hand. Without thinking, she took it, their fingers brushing against each other for an electrifying moment. She met his gaze, feeling vulnerable yet excited. In a moment of bravery, she nodded, and together they approached Shadow. With Jake's support, she gently swung her leg over the horse's back, feeling the sturdy warmth beneath her. "Now hold steady," Jake instructed, stepping back to assess. "You've got this, Sarah." She grasped the reins tightly, her heart pounding. "What do I do now?" "Just relax. He'll respond to you," Jake encouraged. "You're in charge. Talk to him." Sarah closed her eyes for a brief moment, focusing on her breath. "Okay, Shadow," she murmured, feeling linked to him in a way she never expected. "Let's go slow." Jake led Shadow out of the barn, and with each step forward, a rush of exhilaration coursed through her veins. They walked out into the open field, the sun shining brightly overhead, illuminating the world in shades of gold. "This is beautiful," Sarah exclaimed, taking in the rolling hills and the swaying grass surrounding them. "I can't believe we're finally doing this." As they traversed the field, Jake walked beside her, guiding Shadow. "You're a natural, you know," he said, glancing up at her with a genuine smile that made her heart flutter. "I wouldn't go that far," she replied shyly, her cheeks warming under his praise. "I'm still figuring everything out." "No, seriously," Jake insisted. "You have a way with him. It's like he knows you." Feeling a rush of warmth, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The anxiety she had felt earlier faded as they continued to walk, their bond with Shadow deepening with each passing moment. Yet as the sun climbed higher, her confidence slowly wavered. What if she wasn't good enough? What if Shadow didn't want to follow her lead? She could sense her doubts creeping in like shadows in the afternoon light. "Hey." Jake's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking," she replied, forcing a smile. "About what?" he pressed, concern etching his brow. "About how I really want this to work. I don't want to mess it up." The admission felt monumental, as if it laid bare her fears. "You won't mess it up. Everyone has to start somewhere," Jake reassured her, his voice steady and calming. With a deep breath, Sarah decided to push through her doubts. "Okay, let's try a little trot," she suggested, her voice growing stronger. "A trot? You're feeling adventurous." Jake laughed, excitement dancing in his eyes. "All right, just give him a squeeze with your legs and say go." Following his directions, she squeezed her heels against Shadow's sides, a rush of adrenaline fueling her as she said, "Go, Shadow." To her surprise, he moved forward at a gentle trot. The world around her blurred as the air rushed past her face, flooding her senses with exhilaration. For a few moments, Sarah felt invincible, free from the confines of her insecurities and fears. She glanced back at Jake, who was smiling widely, pride shining in his eyes. It was a beautiful moment, shared with her stepbrother, who had seemingly become her anchor. But abruptly, Shadow's trot shifted into a brisker pace, catching her off guard. "Whoa, easy now," she called instinctively, gripping the reins tighter. "Slow down." Jake noticed the shift immediately. "Pull back gently on the reins and talk to him," he shouted, urgency tinging his voice. As she pulled back, Shadow responded, but with each surge, fear began to rise within her. "Jake, he's going too fast." Panic crept into her heart. "Stay calm. You can do this," he urged, rushing alongside them. "Shadow, slow down," she pleaded, desperate for control. Just as it seemed impossible, Shadow halted, skidding to a stop as her body lurched forward. Sarah fought to regain her balance, her heart pounding in her chest. She breathed heavily, anxiety coursing through her, but Jake was quick to steady her. "You did great," he said, maintaining eye contact as he caught up. "Just breathe. You still have control of him. What if I didn't? She whispered, her voice trembling. You did, and now you know how to handle it, he said, his tone filled with reassurance. It's a learning process, just like everything else. She took a moment to regain her composure, feeling grateful for his presence. With trembling hands, she gently stroked Shadow's neck, calming both herself and the horse. I really want to be good at this, she admitted softly. You will be. Just give yourself time, Jake replied, a small smile returning to his face. And I'll always be here to help. As they stood together, her at the helm of Shadow and Jake beside her, Sarah felt a wave of warmth wash over her. This wasn't just about learning to ride a horse. It was about understanding herself, her fears, and her capacity to grow. She was forging a new path, one filled with companionship and adventure, not just with Shadow, but with Jake as well. Let's try again, she said, newfound determination sparking within her. Absolutely, Jake said, his enthusiasm infectious. Together they steered Shadow back toward the open field, ready to embrace whatever awaited them. And as Sarah took a deep breath, she realized she wasn't merely riding a horse. She was charting a course into a new life, filled with hope, growth, and unbreakable bonds. Bonding through challenges. The sun hung high in the sky, bathing the countryside in warmth. But for Sarah, the day felt laden with anxiety. She stood at the barn, nervously glancing at Shadow, who was busily munching hay. After their thrilling ride, her confidence had soared, but unknown challenges loomed ahead. Today, they planned to take Shadow on a trail ride, an uncharted adventure that made her heart flutter, with both excitement and dread. Jake arrived with a bright smile, his energy instantly lifting her spirits. Ready for another adventure? He asked, striding confidently toward her, a saddle in one hand and a bag filled with supplies in the other. Ready as I'll ever be, Sarah replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. She lifted her chin, reminding herself of the bond she had already begun to form with Shadow. Where are we going exactly? There's a trail that leads into the forest just a mile or so from here, Jake explained, tightening the cinch on the saddle. It's beautiful and peaceful, but we need to be smart. Shadows like the trails, but sometimes they can get startled. Startled? Sarah raised an eyebrow. You mean like what happened the other day? Exactly, but don't worry, Jake assured, running a hand through his hair, looking sincere. I'll be right there with you. Just listen to my instructions, and everything will be fine. Swallowing her nerves, Sarah took a deep breath. She mounted Shadow, and felt that familiar rush of exhilaration mixed with unease. Let's go then, together. With Jake leading the way on his horse, Sarah held tightly to the reins, her muscles tense with anticipation. As they trotted out of the barn and onto the open trail, sunlight flickered through the trees, creating a dappled pattern on the forest floor. It was enchanting, yet filled with an undercurrent of uncertainty. Just keep your eyes on the path and don't look back, Jake called out, glancing over his shoulder. His tone was both teasing and supportive, as if he sensed her apprehension and wanted to quell it. Easy for you to say, she muttered under her breath, navigating around the roots and ruts of the terrain. With each stride of Shadow, she felt more at ease. Nature's beauty was starting to envelop her anxiety, replacing it with a sense of adventure. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves surrounded them, mingling with the rhythmic sound of hooves against the dirt path. Sarah felt the peacefulness of the forest begin to wash over her. This is amazing, she declared, a genuine smile blossoming on her face. Right? I knew you'd love it, Jake returned, his confidence palpable. Then the atmosphere shifted. A crackling sound echoed nearby, catching Shadow's attention. Sarah's heart raced as the horse stopped abruptly, nostrils flaring with alarm. Whoa! Easy, Shadow! She exclaimed, gripping the reins tightly. She felt Jake's presence beside her, his calm energy reminding her to stay grounded. It's okay, Jake reassured. Just let him sniff around a bit. Horses can be jumpy, especially in new places. With a flick of his ears, Shadow was still on edge, his muscles tense beneath Sarah. She spoke gently to him, soothingly stroking his neck. It's all right, buddy. You're safe with me. But as she continued to comfort him, uncertainty gnawed at her. Would she lose control again? Suddenly, a deer leapt out of the bushes, startling both Sarah and Shadow. The horse snorted and began to rear slightly, his instincts kicking in. Pull back on the reins. Jake shouted, urging her to regain control. She fought to steady Shadow, the world around her blurring in panic. Slow down, Shadow, please, she pleaded, her voice wavering. She felt the horse shift underneath her, and adrenaline surged through her veins as Jake quickly repositioned himself by their side. It's okay. You have it. You've done it before, he shouted, grounding her with his unwavering confidence. Talk to him. Drawing on her instincts, Sarah took a deep breath and spoke firmly, yet calmly. Shadow, it's okay. You're all right with me. We've got this. Her voice calmed the horse, who stopped fidgeting and began to settle again. Jake gave her an impressed look. See, you're learning. Just breathe. You're two halves figuring this out together. After a few moments, they continued their trail ride, the encounter with the deer lingering in Sarah's mind. Was I really that close to losing control? She asked, fighting against her doubts. No, you handled it. What matters is how you got him back on track, Jake acknowledged, steering his horse closer to hers. We're a team. You have to trust yourself. As they continued riding, Sarah began to take in the beauty surrounding them. Wildflowers dotted the edges of the trail, and dappled sunlight danced on the leaves above them. Thanks for being here, Jake, she admitted, looking over at him. This wouldn't be half as much fun without you. I'm glad you feel that way, he replied with a soft smile. I enjoy hanging out with you, and honestly, I think you're doing great. Her heart fluttered. Really? You think so? Absolutely, he affirmed. Just remember, we all have our moments. It's about getting back in the saddle, literally, and I'll always be right here with you. Bolstered by his encouragement, Sarah focused on the ride. They trotted along a wide stretch of the trail, chatting easily, sharing stories about their childhood, and finding common interests that connected them even further. But as they approached a more rugged section of the trail, tension returned. The path narrowed and the trees encroached, shadows stretching ominously across their path. Sticks snapped underfoot, and the sounds of the forest echoed eerily, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Stay alert. We might run into more wildlife, Jake warned, his tone serious. Just then, a loud rustle from the bushes on the side of the trail sent a jolt through Sarah. Her heart raced as she turned slightly in the saddle, straining to see. There! Jake pointed with urgency. Hold on to Shadow, but before he could finish, a large rabbit darted across the road, startling Shadow once again. The horse jumped to the side, and in a flash of instinct, it began to rear. Jake, no! Sarah screamed, holding tight to the reins. The horse felt unsteady beneath her, and in her mind, she relived her earlier panic as she clung desperately to the situation. Pull back! You've got this! Jake yelled. In a moment of sheer reflex, Sarah leaned forward, wrapping her arms tightly around Shadow's neck and murmuring calming words. It's all right, boy. You're safe. I'm here. To her astonishment, Shadow calmed slightly, sensing her determination. Jake rushed to her side, guiding his horse close. You did it again. Give him a moment, he instructed, his voice loud but comforting. After an agonizing minute, Shadow settled down, the tremble in his body dissipating. Sarah straightened herself in the saddle and let out a shaky breath, heart still racing. That was too close, she admitted, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her. A little excitement is good for the soul, Jake said with a grin, though he looked relieved. You're doing amazing, don't lose faith in yourself. As they resumed their ride, Sarah felt her connection to Shadow deepen with each encounter. Navigating these challenges was forging a bond between them, one marked by a shared understanding of fear and trust. They shifted into a slow canter after a few more minutes, their surroundings becoming increasingly beautiful. Sunlight leaked through the canopy above, illuminating the vibrant wildflowers dotting the way. Have you ever thought about competing? Jake asked suddenly, adjusting his grip on the reins. Competing? The idea felt foreign yet thrilling. I've never ridden in a competition. You should think about it. You have a natural instinct, he encouraged. Maybe a local show could be your first. Her heart raced at the thought. Really, you think I could? I know you could. With more practice, you two can ace it. Just start small, Jake replied, his enthusiasm contagious. For the first time, Sarah began to imagine it. The thought of riding in a competition propelled her forward, and she felt the drive to conquer every challenge in her path. As they reached a clearing, Jake suddenly halted his horse. "Check this out," he proclaimed, gesturing toward a sparkling stream nearby. The sunlight turned the water into a cascade of shimmering diamonds. "Wow," Sarah marveled, watching the water tumble over the rocks below. "It's beautiful." As they dismounted, Sarah felt a triumphant rush of accomplishment. They had faced fears together, and now, standing by the stream, it was more evident than ever that she was not alone in this journey. "I'm so glad we came," she said, looking at Jake. "This feels like a fresh start." Jake met her gaze, sincerity shining in his eyes. "I'm glad you're my partner in this." They shared a warm smile, their connection shy, unspoken but tinged with excitement for what lay ahead. And as they stood there, the complexities of their lives at home faded into the background, replaced by the wonder of the moment. "All right, let's take a break here," Jake suggested. "Let Shadow drink some water. He deserves it after everything we've put him through." As they settled by the stream, their laughter and conversation flowed freely, a newfound energy weaving through their connection. The chill of the water seeped into the atmosphere, bringing clarity and peace to their bond. They watched as Shadow dipped his head toward the stream, water cascading over his muzzle. In that moment, Sarah felt a sense of gratitude not just for the horse, but for Jake, for the bond they were creating together, evolving into something infinitely more meaningful. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Sarah realized they were just beginning their adventure. It wasn't only about mastering horseback riding. It was about conquering fears, building trust, and forming a family forged in love and understanding. And as she glanced over at Jake, smiling at the wonder unfolding around them, Sarah felt, for the first time, that she was right where she was meant to be. Together, they would navigate whatever challenges came next, one ride, one challenge, one bond at a time. Facing self-doubt, the days rolled by, each one melting seamlessly into the next, as Sarah and Jake continued to nurture their bond with Shadow. The rhythm of their new life had created a routine that was both comforting and thrilling. However, under the surface of her exhilaration, Sarah felt the stirring of Shadow's doubt began to creep in as the upcoming local horse show approached. "You're going to wow them all," Jake assured her one afternoon as they brushed Shadow in the barn, but Sarah couldn't shake the knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. "I don't know, Jake. What if I fall?" she fretted, the words spilling from her lips as she brushed off the clingy strands of hay from Shadow's coat. "Every rider has fallen at least once." "Hell, I've taken a tumble or two," he replied without missing a beat, his casual tone laced with genuine reassurance. "It's part of learning. But I don't want to make a fool of myself. What if I can't control him under pressure?" Anxiety gnawed at her, feeding on her insecurities. "Sarah," Jake said, stepping closer, his eyes earnest, "you deserve to shine. You've come so far already. Just remember what we've learned together. This isn't just about winning. It's about the experience." She looked at him, feeling the warmth of his encouragement wrap around her like a comforting blanket. "What if nobody thinks I'm good enough?" "You don't need everyone's approval," he countered firmly. "Not everyone will love what you do, but that doesn't define your worth. You're doing this because you love it, not for anyone else." Despite his words, doubt still loomed over her like a thundercloud. "What if I fail?" she whispered, a sliver of vulnerability slipping through her facade. "You won't," Jake stated, his voice resolute. "And if by some chance you stumble, you'll get back up. That's what we do, together." Feeling a flicker of resolve, Sarah lifted her chin as she absorbed his words. "Okay, together." The day of the show arrived, bright and bustling, filled with colorful banners that flapped in the light breeze. The air was electric with excitement, yet Sarah could feel her pulse quickening with every step closer to the arena. As they walked toward the stable area where their fellow competitors warmed up, Sarah's heart raced nervously. She felt an overwhelming sense of pressure weighing on her. "I can't believe I'm really doing this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've got this," Jake said, his presence beside her a comforting anchor. "Just focus on yourself and Shadow. Block out the noise." With each passing moment, the noise began to fade as Sarah focused on preparing Shadow. With Jake beside her, they groomed him meticulously, ensuring every bit of debris was cleared from his coat. The sun's rays glinted off Shadow's coat, illuminating every nuance of his power and grace. As they finished, Jake stepped back, a proud smile stretching across his face. "You're ready," he affirmed, giving her a thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, Sarah mounted Shadow, her emotions swirling like a tempest in her heart. The path to the arena began to open up, and she could hear the buzz of excitement from the crowd. Adrenaline surged through her as the announcer called their names. Next up, Sarah and Shadow. Heart racing, Sarah steered Shadow into the arena, where the sun poured down warmly, casting long shadows across the sandy surface. As they passed the audience, she could see familiar faces, her mother and stepfather sitting proudly in the front row. Their cheering felt like a lifeline, anchoring her as anxiety threatened to sweep her under. Jake stood on the sidelines, waving encouragingly, and in that moment, Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She and Shadow could do this. The arena felt alive, filled with laughter, the thunder of hooves, and the occasional cheer from the spectators. But the energy was a double-edged sword, her nerves clawing at her confidence. She took a deep breath, focusing solely on Shadow, trying to quell the doubts swirling like a storm within her. The first trial started. A simple obstacle course that required them to navigate through cones, gallop over small jumps, and complete a few turns. She concentrated fiercely, mentally rehearsing the steps in her mind. As they approached the first cone, Sarah felt Shadow respond, moving fluidly beneath her. They were in sync. The world around her began to fade. It was just her and Shadow against the course. "Turn left," Jake shouted from the sidelines, his voice cutting through her focus. They executed the turn seamlessly, soaring through the course like they had practiced 1,000,000 times. For a moment, Sarah felt invincible, her worries dissipating in the rush of joy. But as they approached the first jump, uncertainty flickered through her. The jump appeared taller than it had during practice. "Come on, Shadow," she urged softly, gripping the reins tighter. Shadow hesitated slightly, his muscles tensing. "You can do this!" she encouraged, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "Just trust me." With a few powerful strides, Shadow took off, jumping successfully over the obstacle. The crowd erupted in applause, and Sarah's heart swelled with pride. As the course continued, she could feel her confidence rising like a tide. With each successful turn and jump, she let go of her fears, embracing the thrill. But as they approached the final stretch, a sudden chaos erupted nearby. A rider's horse reared up unexpectedly, its rider shouting in panic. The noise shattered Sarah's focus, sending a shockwave of fear coursing through her. "Shadow, no!" she cried, as her horse instinctively reared in response to the commotion. "Breathe, Sarah!" Jake's voice rang out like a lighthouse in the storm. "Talk to him!" Desperate to gain control, Sarah leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Shadow's neck. "It's okay. It's just noise. We can do this," she urged, feeling her pulse raging against her skin. With one last determined breath, she gripped the reins and steered Shadow forward, willing her fear to dissipate. To her relief, Shadow steadied and moved forward, but the distraction remained. They charged ahead toward the final jump. It loomed large, and doubt seeped back in. What if they crashed? What if they both fell? "Trust yourself. Trust him," Jake shouted, his voice slicing through the fear. Drawing on his encouragement, Sarah focused solely on Shadow, feeling the pulsating energy beneath her. "Let's do this," she cried out, squeezing her legs against him and urging him on. In one fluid motion, they soared over the jump. Time seemed to dream. The world stilled as they flew through the air, just for a moment, suspended in a beautiful weightlessness. When they hit the ground, a surge of exhilaration propelled them forward, and Sarah knew they had done it. The crowd roared in approval, and even her heart could not contain the joy that erupted within her. As they crossed the finish line, The both of them galloping triumphantly, Sarah couldn't help but celebrate. Her heart soared higher than her body ever could. She reached down, gently patting Shadow's neck, whispering, "We did it." Together. Jake rushed to them, a proud grin plastered across his face. "I knew you could. You were incredible." They dismounted, and Sarah felt an overwhelming rush of joy. All the anxiety, all the doubt faded into the background as cheers echoed around her. This was a moment they had created together, a testament to their bond. But just as the celebration began, a sudden crash echoed across the arena. A horse, startled by the noise of the commotion, began to bolt. The rider struggled to hold on, panic flashing across her face as onlookers gasped. "Sarah, watch out," Jake shouted as the horse barreled toward her and Shadow, its mane flying wildly, eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, Sarah stepped forward, signaling to Shadow to stand still. "Whoa, Shadow," she commanded, her heart racing, adrenaline flooding her system once more. The world seemed to slow down as she faced the galloping horse. She felt every muscle in her body tense, fear clawing at her determination. Keeping a steady presence in the chaos, Sarah reached out, whispering to Shadow, "Don't move." Shadow stood firm, but the approaching horse showed no signs of stopping. At the last moment, Sarah sensed an instinct within, a call to protect. Time wove itself into a tapestry of urgency. "Stay with me, Shadow," she urged fiercely, focusing on the power of the bond they had formed. With a surge of determination, Sarah stepped forward, positioning herself between the chaotic horse and Shadow, the energy of both animals vibrating through the air, an unparalleled force. "Easy, girl," she shouted loudly, arms raised, projecting calm intensity. To her astonishment, Shadow responded, filling the space with unwavering strength. The other horse veered slightly, recognizing Sarah's steady presence, and skidded to a halt just inches away, its rider finally regaining control. The arena erupted into applause, but Sarah could barely hear over her heart pounding in her chest. She turned back toward Jake, stunned by what had just transpired. "Did that just happen?" she asked, breathless and wide-eyed. Jake stepped forward, looking equally astonished. "You were incredible, Sarah. You saved that horse." Reality began to set in, and as the cheers continued to cascade around her, Sarah realized that it wasn't just about winning a prize. It was about courage, strength, and the bond they had created, one forged through fear, yet strengthened by love. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "You taught me to trust myself and to trust him." Jake smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "And you just proved you can handle anything that comes your way." In that moment, surrounded by the laughter and cheers, Sarah's heart swelled with a vibrant sense of purpose. Though self-doubt had fluttered just beneath the surface, she realized her strength came from the connections she had built, not just with Shadow, but with Jake. As the day began to wane, and the sky held the promise of twilight, Sarah knew that she had not only conquered the challenges of the day, but had also embraced the essence of adventure itself. Together, they would face whatever came next in their journey, not just as horse and rider, but as friends forged in the fires of uncertainty, ready to embrace the future that lay ahead. And no matter what lay in store, Sarah felt undeniably ready.